Hey everyone, welcome back to Flow State Reactions. I am Mistari and I'm here yet again to react to The Lord of the Rings. And this is the behind the scenes, the appendices for the Two Towers. And right now we are on editorial refining the story, okay? I'm really excited to get into this next video. This journey has been long and it is going to continue to be even longer because remember, I still have to react to the playlist for The Return of the King, which I'm sure is going to be just as wonderful. And then we're going to do the playlist for all of the Hobbit movies as well. Okay, so just get comfortable and let's enjoy. All right, everybody relax and 1, 2, 3, let's flow. Refining the story.
We made a decision quite early that there'd be a different editor for each of the three films,
really?
and it wasn't really a creative decision because ultimately I collaborate, quite closely with the editor, so I wasn't concerned that there'd be a different style of cutting. It was really a practical decision, and having 3 films shot at once was just too much for one person. They literally wouldn't have been able to keep up with the rate of shooting.
I'm trying to tell you.
One of the most interesting aspects of cutting for Peter Jackson is that he's had a big hand in everything he's cut. He's a good editor. I can't pull the wool over his eyes.
The first time that I ever get to see the movie is as a fine cut, which is everything that we shot cut together nice and tightly. And so I actually get to look at the movie for the first time as a complete film. It's not one that is necessarily, the best version of the film, but it is something that enables me to have a context.
Oh, interesting.
In cutting The Two Towers, I don't think it would have mattered at all how I'd put it together, any individual scene. Peter's approach is, that's very good. How else could it go together?
Oh, really?
Each scene, while it
Look at Peter chilling on the couch and editing. I am done.
Every line from
He is everywhere.
will be examined.
Open war is upon you, whether you'd risk it or not. Open war is upon you, whether you'd risk it or not.
What?
Open war is upon you.
You have to decide which one to choose?
He's got one of the most amazing memories for footage and for details. You'd say, oh, I think in the next take, somebody's hand comes in a bit quicker than it did in that one. And he'd always be right.
Now, the last one wasn't bad, but again, there's only 3 of them, isn't there?
Our day normally started with Pete would come in
picture.
in his position on the couch.
Cutting in progress.
And within 5 or 10 minutes, we were quizzed.
Peter,
the 2 local
I
Wellington
just love you
newspapers
so much.
merged
I can't even
during
take
the
it.
middle of our edit session, and much to Peter's
Get this
delight,
man chilling on the couch, editing.
each day.
Which Scots-born Otago MP became Speaker of the House of Representatives in 1990.
It was not the easiest quiz in the world, and I think Mike and I did well. We would often get up to around the 7, 8 out of 10 mark.
I mean, Mike and Jabez may have a different story, but they generally only got 4 out of 10 right each day, which is a little bit embarrassing.
I imagined like a room full of people editing the movies.
He was either very happy that we were stupid or enormously pissed off that the questions were too easy. That's how the day went. Then we got to work.
Oh my God, they are
The difficult
so
thing
happy.
with the middle chapter of a 3-set story is you struggle more to have a beginning and an end.
Oh, really?
Film 2 was intended to have a prologue. Pete's view was that if you hadn't seen the first film, pay a few bucks, see the first film, we won't need to show you a compressed version. It was 5 or 6 minutes that we'd rather have to tell the next part of the story.
Oh, okay.
It's been areas where we've butted heads with the studio. We screened The Two Towers early on, and there was no prologue because we felt we didn't need one for The Two Towers. And the first note that came back was, there's got to be a prologue. We had this big fight and argument that went on for a while about, they were insisting that we get Kate Blanchett to do this prologue, and we were saying, no, we don't want a prologue. And I fell in love with the whole concept of starting the film with the Balrog fight.
Yeah. Oh,
like a James Bond
what a
movie
commanding
this
scene.
really cool action moment, and it ends, and Frodo kind of wakes up from this dream.
Okay.
I just feel like cheering every moment, just like I do at the
Every
end of
moment.
every James Bond intro.
I actually thought, to be quite honest, that it
That is so true.
one of the functions that a prologue would do, and that it reorientated you back into the world of Middle-earth.
I agree.
we sort of wanted to have a prologue in the middle rather than at the beginning.
Okay.
That was where we felt the ideal place for a prologue was.
Mm-hmm.
And so we effectively did that. We put a prologue in the middle
I heard
of the movie,
that.
which was the sequence where Elrond is like having this rather strange telepathic kind of connection with Galadriel.
They're just making up all the rules
Galadriel
as they go.
montage in the middle of the film was something largely created during the editing process. At one stage, Elrond was actually going to visit Lothlorien and talk directly to Galadriel, but once it was decided that Arwen would not go to Lothlorien and Helm's Deep, that scene had to be reworked.
The time of the elves is over.
They had to rework that whole scene
Do we leave
because of a different decision they
to its
made.
fate?
I think the editing of film 2 was more difficult in many ways for Peter and us all on film 2 because of the multiple storylines. On film 1, there was a certain limit to the variety that the scenes could be rearranged in. It was generally the same characters in every scene, and there was a linear progression that had to be followed. With film 2, we had 3, 4, even 5 storylines.
Yeah, that's
sometimes.
true, huh?
The way that I cut it in the Two Towers, rather than starting at the beginning of the film and then trying to interweave everything as I progress, I'm just going to cut one storyline at a time. And I started with the Frodo, Sam, Gollum story.
Oh,
So basically, from their
interesting.
very first appearance in the movie to the very end of the film and the last shots of Frodo and Sam, I'm basically just starting by cutting that story
Yeah.
and seeing the shape of that story.
Oh, that was
And then
so
we move on to the next story.
genius.
So we might cut Aragorn. So then we have our different plot threads separately
Yeah,
cut.
you can,
But each
and
of
it's
them
like
has been worked in
cohesive,
isolation
yeah.
as a standalone story. And then the fun part, and it is actually quite fun, is to then experiment with the ways to intercut.
Yeah.
Not only do you have 3 different storylines, but
Oh,
they
wonderful.
are also different in terms of pace. You've got battles and frenetic action with one storyline, and you've got constant sort of drudgery working your way
that's
through
true.
landscape in another storyline. And you've got long, pausing dialogue in the third storyline with Treebeard.
Pete and I used to squabble a bit over how long Treebeard's scene should be.
I mean, I guess you say he's boring.
No, well,
in
no,
his
I
own
don't.
Lovable way, and I like.
No, I don't
love
feel
the idea
boring
that
was
Treebeard's boring.
appropriate.
Oh,
It
no,
was
you've got
just
a
so,
shorter
he
and
just
he
would take so long to speak.
He reminds me of the sort of, a committee man. He's a bit of a guy that would talk your ear off if you gave him a chance. And he talks obviously very slowly.
Right.
So when he talks your ear off, it takes a hell of a long time.
Pete found the fact that the two hobbits were bored to tears and fell asleep amusing. I worried that if we did it in real time, we'd do it to the audience.
I didn't know that they were supposed to be bored to tears. I thought they were just, he was like, his voice was like a lullaby. You know what I mean?
Traditionally in the film industry, if a filmmaker finishes
That's
a
so
movie,
funny.
the studio goes off and screens
And they
it
were
for
tired
an audience of
already.
500 or 600 people, but we just don't have previews of our films because of the mainly the security aspect of people, posting reviews on the internet 3 or 4 months before they come out. We basically do our own previews, like our own private filmmaker previews.
Oh, okay. Really? Good for
We
you.
actually just run the film for ourselves.
Look at
And
you
we
got a
look at
private
it with a
theater.
very critical eye. We actually
We
say,
just do
okay,
our
this
own
is what we've
private
got today.
reviews. Look at this, a whole theater. Where are
What could
they?
we do with it that would make it better? And so each of the last 3 years we've brought the actors
love
back
it.
to New Zealand and we've done what are called pickups.
We actually do a little mini shoot. Barry Osborne brings the team together,
Right.
and we, have a brief prep period, and the sets need to be built, and we shoot.
The pickup time is really about
Pickup.
finessing what we've already done.
In the case of Gollum, for instance, it was really valuable because we were seeing this character starting to work through the final effect shots that Weta had begun to deliver.
Okay.
And we saw so much more potential in Gollum. We were thought,
Look at
we
Gollum.
could make this whole internal debate between Smeagol and Gollum so much more interesting and entertaining.
Fascinating.
So that whole arc of the story really was refined during pickups. It was there before, but it wasn't as clear and it didn't have as much impact. Peter felt that there was not clear geography of where Orthanc is and where Barad-dûr was and where Faramir is in relationship to that, where Gondor is.
We've got Aragorn at Helm's Deep. Frodo's being taken to a place. Is that place near Helm's Deep? Is it far
I have no
away?
idea.
Is Sauron
I was
attacking,
not
or
paying
is
attention to the
Saruman
geography.
attacking? Who are these two
I
guys
couldn't tell
both
you.
attacking different targets?
That was all worked out with a self-drawn map that Peter
Okay.
Jackson made.
I got the book. I got the
Right.
book. I've got the Middle Earth map, and I drew my own
Yeah.
version of what a map should be.
Pete grabbed his 8mm video camera and holding it in one hand and pointing with the other.
Oh, he drew that?
Shot it. That was
Are
while
those
we
the
were
shots that were in the behind the scenes clips?
And it was a perfectly fair representation of what needed to be shot.
Saruman attacks from Isengard.
Look at that.
Sauron from Mordor.
Wow.
Sauron will strike us soon.
We just sort of created this map moment from sort of nothing. Really, it just didn't exist.
I mean,
and so
seriously.
that's how, lateral thinking and the editing process can be a real lifesaver.
Some of the better
Peter be brainstorming his ass off. I'm trying to tell you.
DVD, they're brilliant.
I just cannot.
I felt really strongly, for example, about
just sitting there like, I don't really know where these locations are. Let me create a map.
Explain who these people are. And we shot that
out of
during,
nowhere.
Of course, the pickups. And it's a brilliant scene. And I was really disappointed when it didn't make the movie, but I'm delighted that it's an extended cut DVD.
This is just marvelous.
Your friends are with you.
Hi, Legolas.
Let's hope we last the night.
Cutting Helm's Deep was probably a bit like shooting at Rare, and it felt a bit like fighting in it. There was a good deal of footage. It took months to edit.
When we had 24 minutes cut, I thought, ooh, this battle's looking pretty tasty. It's a strange thing when you get a battle that is working perfectly well, and then you start adding material that you think you've cut reasonably well. Each time we added a scene, it tended to get a bit flabbier.
Peter was always worried about battle fatigue.
Flabby.
Peter felt like the battle has to be exciting and dramatic and big, but it can't be so long that people become fatigued, and he was very conscious of that.
No, never.
It got to 36 minutes long, and it wasn't as good as when it was 24 minutes long. Now, the shape that occurs in the final film is
24 minutes long? 36 minutes long? Really?
And we cut back. When you do cut away, you know that the battle continued while you were gone, so you don't have to use so much of it.
A lot of the stuff that's not in there is slashing and hacking and fighting.
We found when we were cutting, you really needed to follow your main characters, your principal characters. If we had 2 or 3 shots of stunt guys fighting, you'd want to come back to one of your heroes.
Yeah, that's true.
I think with any battle sequence, there has to be a fundamental purpose to the battle. When we were beginning to cut it together, it was just an attack on a castle. We felt strongly that we needed to make the battle have more of a human quality, that there had to be more of an emotional reason for the battle to take place.
Oh, they're going to eat you.
So when we did our pickups for the 2 towers, we spent a day during our pickup shoot actually filming a group of actors and extras being terrified. Suddenly it had a purpose. I mean, to have Vigo standing on the ramparts, drawing a sword, facing the Uruks, and then you're cutting to the huddled women and children in the caves, and then back to Vigo, you felt, wow, this guy is defending his people.
Right.
The scripts always
had...
That's
so true.
That's
so true. They added that at the last minute.
To Isengard and confronting Saruman.
Thought it was in the script.
It just ended up being obvious to us when we cut the film together that having put the audience through not just the Battle of Helm's Deep, but the immediate aftermath when the riders charge down a causeway and Gandalf's at the top of the slope and he charges down. It's just this like almost biblical.
I don't know how much I can put on YouTube for you guys, but my goodness.
Flooding of Isengard.
It's starting to bring back the memories.
Have a 6 or 7 minute dialogue sequence where they confront Saruman at the end of the film just felt very anticlimactic. It's sort of, it just there seemed to be a natural conclusion to the film. Hey, we've been sitting here for 3 hours. Okay, we've seen the big battle. Now it's time to go home. Yeah. We thought, well, hang on, there is an alternative here that if we have the confrontation with Saruman as an opening scene in Return of the King, it actually is going to work better in terms of the movies to be an opening of a film, not the climax of a film.
Okay.
We had sort of a basis of a cut of the film.
We should have had our film completely cut and we were just, going to London to be with Howard for the music recording.
Okay.
Except this time we had to take all of the cutting equipment, we had to take the Avids, we had to take Mike Horton and Jabez over with us.
Because it wasn't done, being edited?
We installed a whole edit suite inside this house because we were furiously cutting this film still.
Okay.
And that was extremely stressful for those guys out there because they were working such extremely long hours.
Yeah, and, I don't know how you keep your mind.
Very little time off.
It was initially envisaged that we would cut 4 or 5 scenes perhaps, largely about the
editing is very tedious,
but
my goodness, this is so impressive.
The film, the amount of material that we needed to modify grew.
We had a narrative climax, but we didn't have a thematic or emotional commentary on it. And thus the scene at the stone window.
Yeah.
It's like in the great stories, Mr. Fergal. Mm-hmm. The ones that really mattered.
Philippa and Fran wrote this speech, which essentially took the scene at the stone window, its beginning and its end.
Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back.
They had to add that at the last minute?
And created a middle. And then once they crafted the middle, they took existing footage, you know, of the various climaxes and stitched it all together in a way that made Sam the narrator of the end of Two Towers.
Oh,
the world
interesting.
Go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened.
It's interesting that they put that in after the fact because they felt like they needed it, you know?
That speech at the stone window was Peter Jackson doing this fairly amusing imitation of Sam.
But even darkness must pass. A new day will come.
Peter Jackson temporary voiceover.
It will shine out the
This
clearer.
is Peter's voice. This project was all-consuming for years for Peter and everyone else involved, of course. But Peter was completely lost in this movie-making process.
And I should have known.
It's a lot.
Peter wrote this sign, and at the bottom he put "for now" in brackets. And I went home and thought I was finished. And then I got a call going, "What are you doing?" And I went, "Well, we're finished, aren't we, boss?"
Right.
We're at the verge of doing the final.
I am done. I cannot take it.
The soundtracks and the film to mix it, and 2 weeks before delivery, and I asked for the editing team, for Mike and Jabez and the Avers, to be shifted into a room just down the corridor from the sound mixing stage, and I know that caused a degree of concern.
He would come through and go, "Boys, I spotted something."
What? What now?
We would cut it that evening.
It was unbelievably stressful. I think I spent the entire last 6 to 8 weeks, if not more, of the post-production permanently hunched over all the time.
Okay, I'm trying to tell you, I would be in a daze.
Vanished into my neck and shoulders because I was just so sort of guarded, and just because you just knew how delicate the balance was to get it all done. You could only do so much in so many hours in so many days.
Okay.
Like almost any director I know, Peter likes to push it until the absolute deadline that he has to hand the film in. And the digital
I'm learning that this is a pattern.
Probably 2 or 3 weeks.
I can't imagine what we've encountered with Return of the King.
Grade.
Oh God.
We didn't have to cut the neg anymore.
That means that Peter can make a change in the editing room, and the next day that can be recorded out on film as one piece of negative that covers a whole reel. So it buys you probably weeks of time.
Just about pushed everybody to the limit, I think, of me doing some editorial changes, like with only days to go.
It's like, I'm sorry, but
they're worthwhile. I mean, I just I sort of have this philosophy that nothing's ever perfect, that you simply run out of time.
It was fantastic to have the opportunity.
That's a fair point.
Peter
But
Jackson on a
you did
day-to-day
perfect.
basis.
So
it's something that a few years ago I couldn't have imagined and would not have thought was possible. And and now I've spent a year cutting a film with him. It's been an honour.
Peter is not a product of a film school. He's a product of making the stuff himself,
right,
and figuring
just
it
experience.
out how films are structured.
Okay.
And a very unusual man in that regard. I don't know anyone who's come that route and ended up doing
just did it on
pictures of
did
this
it on his own, just
when you're
trial and error.
It's important to wipe your mind of any preconceptions. Don't try to justify decisions you made at the time because you had a justification for doing something 2 years ago when you shot it. Don't carry that baggage anymore. Just kind of sit back and try and be critical and just say, okay, is this film working? Why isn't it working? Use your instincts. I mean, I've often thought that I would love one day to look at one of my movies having been hypnotized by a professional hypnotist into forgetting that I ever shot it.
Right.
Because it is such a valuable concept for a filmmaker to be able to look at a movie, having no knowledge.
Hypnotize me, please, so I can watch it like other people.
You don't know anything about Lord of the Rings. You don't know what the story is. You don't know the characters. You have no recollection of ever shooting it. And I kind of go along and I sit and I look at this thing and I don't know what it is there. I'd love to have that total innocent sort of lack of knowledge. Of course, the problem would be if you couldn't reverse it. And I had no recollection. And then New Line would have a bit of a problem, and I'd have a bit of a problem at that stage. But I'd love to try it one day. It would be really fascinating to see if you could actually do that.
Yeah, to see if you could actually do that. Oh my goodness, I love that so much. I really did. Okay, let's see. The next one is coming on. I'm just going to go ahead and let this play. It's still circling. Did Peter get a credit like for editing? Was that in the credits too, that he was also a part of the editing? Because, like editor, Peter Jackson. I just thought he was the director. I didn't know he was actually editing too. Like literally on the couch, chilling, editing. Okay, it's on. Okay, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and stop the editing for this particular video right here, and we will pick up with the next video. I think it's Music for Middle-earth next week. And yeah, Peter is something else, isn't he? My goodness, I had no idea just how involved he was in the editing process of these movies. I mean, he was just right at home, sitting on a couch, chilling, and just, giving direction to the editors. At one point, one of the editors said his editing approach is to say, to their ideas, oh, that's pretty good. How else could we put it together? Like, what? I cannot. Just the visual of him just being like just at the forefront of every part of this movie making process is just beyond me. I just was not ready. I mean, since the very beginning, and I'm still being blown away. I'm still being impressed. It's something else. They actually showed that every single line from every single take was actually examined by the different editors. So this was a very time-consuming project, I liked how they approached it too, that they edited the different plot threads separately. And then, so each storyline was completely edited as its own separate story in isolation. And then they were able to play around with how they were going to actually piece all the different plot threads together, which was very clever, actually. I like how Peter was playing around at the end, saying that he wished that he could be hypnotized. He may not have been playing. He may actually be serious, that he wished he could have been hypnotized so that he could actually forget about his involvement in the movie, so he can actually watch it like us, like a fresh viewer. Can you imagine? It's so funny though, even in his daydream about what it would be like to watch the movie as a normal viewer, he was still daydreaming about how he would pick it apart. Like, oh no, you need to do this, and you should have done this, and you should have done this. That is too funny to me. You would think he would just want to sit and eat some popcorn and just watch the movie and just be, just blown away and enamored by it like we were. But no, he wants to watch it so that he could find something else to fix. Oh, that's too good. I thought it was interesting where he said, nothing's ever perfect. You just simply run out of time. But I will have to say that the trilogy in itself is the closest to perfection that we're ever going to see. I don't want to say ever, but come on. Like, this was, it's a miracle. We're all in agreement there. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you all again next week. Okay? All right, until then, let's flow.